And welcome back to the Ryan and Log Fantasy Show. This is the newest episode on Friday, November 20th. As always, I am Ryan.
And I am Logan.
And this week, we will go through some of our starts of the week and a preview for what we expect is going to might happen in Week 11 of the fantasy football season. So, after Thursday night, which is a pretty good game against the Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals, the Cardinals are who we thought they were. No, I'm just kidding. That sounds like a famous quote now. They lost, but me personally, I loved it because I finally got a Seattle Seahawks running back that I could play. I had Carlos Hyde because I have gone through the gauntlet of having Chris Carson all season. So to finally have a legitimate guy to start gets me 16.5 fantasy points. I am psyched going in my matchup for Sunday. What are you thinking, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, you saw the difference a real running back makes in that offense.
Oh, Lord, yes.
When the teams can't just load up on Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, it opened up so much room for them to work on deep routes and then also for Carlos Hyde to work in the running game. Like, he was 5.6 yards a carry. That's a great game from a running back.
Yeah, and look at the matchup last week with the Seahawks when they played the Rams. Like I'm fumbling here. Metcalf and Wilson both had very bad games to their standard. And this week, like, Metcalf only had 12.10, but he realistically should have had almost 20 because he should have caught another touchdown in the end zone near the end of the second half, and he just let it hit his face.
Yeah, that's a bad drop.
So like easily, like, that was a great bounce back game for them. And that's the thing, like you said, when they actually have a legitimate running back, whether it's Carlos Hyde or Chris Carson, that it opens up everything because then they, like you said, they can't just load up the box. They can't just double team Metcalf and Lockett and then just live with whoever's running the football that day.
Yeah, when they double team those guys, when they go kind of into the nickel, go small defense, then they just run it right down their throats with Carlos Hyde. And it's been super effective for them when they can do it this year.
Yep. Did this game tell you anything about the Cardinals?
I mean, I think it showed they're actually a good team. Like, they made a lot of terrible mistakes throughout, and they were still in it with the Seahawks right down to the wire.
The one thing I could not understand is we have a friend of ours that is a massive Cardinals fan, and I was texting him near the end of the game, and he's like, Cliff Kingsbury is the reason we lost this game. But I get it. Cliff Kingsbury calls the plays. But he's like, at the end of the day, Kyler Murray's got to be smart enough to not go for like 2 straight end zone shots from the 40-yard line and just get the first down. Just go for 5 yards, 6 yards, get out of bounds, move the chains. And that's something I don't like seeing from Kyler Murray because if he, like, what it showed is that when he can't get like running because Seattle was kind of balling him up and he wasn't running a whole lot, he can't. He's a good thrower, but it's like the Lamar Jackson. You force Kyler Murray to throw, you're really going to limit his upside, especially in fantasy. Like, Kyler Murray's still had an okay game, but it wasn't anything that he's been used to all season.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty average passing quarterback, but that's okay because generally he's so dynamic on the ground, and especially in those read action around the goal lines, he's been awesome. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you can keep him from running, it does neutralize a big part of his game.
But just to put it in perspective, Kyler Murray, and he had his worst game of the fantasy season this year, and it was still 20 points.
Yeah, he's been far and away the best quarterback in fantasy this year.
Easily.
It's the rushing and really the rushing touchdowns.
That's what's really been...
Like, looking at it, he's got 10 rushing touchdowns this season.
Which would put him on track to be one of the best running backs in fantasy, if he's, like, legitimately.
Yeah, he's been insane with the rushing this year. It's very similar to what Lamar did, but with extra passing yards.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, with that kind of out of the way, talked about that game. It was exciting, but we got to move on because we got to start focusing on Sunday and Monday. This is the big chunk. This is where you win your weeks, obviously. Now, we're going to start with our starts of the week. Now, is there anybody, Logan, that you were looking at, and due to maybe situations or due to matchups, is there anybody that you were looking at thinking you have to start this person?
I mean, most people probably be starting him anyways, but Mike Davis against Detroit. Mm-hmm. He's slowed down since his start to the season, but Teddy Bridgewater's banged up. Doesn't look like he's going to play. So they're going to need more of the running game, I think. And Detroit, they can't stop running backs. They've been terrible at stopping running backs. So I think it's set up well for a big Mike Davis game.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Funny you say that game because one of my starts of the week is Marvin Jones for the Detroit Lions. And it might sound greasy, that Marvin Jones is a start of the week, but when you look at it, they have no Danny Amendola, they have no Kenny Golladay, so their only real threats. They have no DeAndre Swift either.
Yeah, which is a big loss.
Which is a big loss for them. So their only real offensive threats are going to be
Marvin Jones
and TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah.
So if you have either one of those guys, start them both up, especially against Carolina. That is not really a good team that's going to be able to stop them defensively. And when you look at even Marvin Jones, even when the other guys were healthy, Marvin Jones in his last 4 games was 10.5 fantasy points, 17.4, 11.8, 19.6 last week. And especially with, like I said, with very limited options now on offense, he's going to be getting a bulk of the target share there with TJ.
Yeah, I think it's a great start, provided Matthew Stafford's healthy. It's looking like he's going to play. It shouldn't be a problem. He's one of the tougher guys in the league. But if he were to miss, I think you'd still start Marvin Jones, but it just would bump him down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else, Luke, that you're looking at and thinking?
I mean, I think really there's 3 guys on Washington I'd be pretty excited to play. Like if you got Terry McLaurin, J.D. McKissick, or Antonio Gibson. Am I thinking of that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Antonio Gibson. Yeah,
just blanked there for a second.
Yeah, you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, those 3 guys. The Bengals defense is not good. And those 3 guys are the whole offense. Like Logan Thomas gets 5 or 6 targets a week, but I'm not too worried about him taking away from what McLaurin, McKissick, and Gibson have been doing.
Yep, especially McKissick with Alex Smith under center. He loves doing that little 3-yard dump-off pass to the running back, and J.D. McKissick has been that guy for him all season. And J.D. McKissick just puts up numbers because he's getting 13 targets a game from Alex Smith.
Yeah, it's 2 games with Alex Smith. He has 14 targets and 15 targets.
And that's not including the rushing attempts he might get here and there.
It makes no sense. It's terrible for actual offense. It's working for them, I guess, but
yeah,
for fantasy, especially if you're in any sort of PPR, it's a gold mine.
It's a gold mine because like normally any good running back like a Christian McCaffrey might get 10 targets on a good week, and McKissick is getting like 14. He is having like elite running back target share. He's having elite wide receiver target share at this point. And He's just like, yeah, if he's making, especially those catches, they're all catchable balls. So he's catching like 10 to 13 balls a game. And like you said, in PPR, that is like something you cannot pass up.
Yeah, he's basically getting all the points you'd expect from him just from catches if you're in a full PPR.
Yeah, which is something you just can't deny. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Now there's one guy that I have talked to Logan about, and I feel like we've talked about this for a while, that I am so excited to hear he's going to be starting this Sunday. It is Taysom Hill. Because every time we watch a game where the Saints might be playing, we always see Taysom Hill under center, and we go, we know it's a run. How do they not know it's a run? Because Taysom Hill only runs the football. And I think 2 weeks ago he threw the football, and I texted Logan me, he's like, he just threw the football. And we were just like, oh my God. But like I said in the last podcast on Tuesday, I feel like a bit of a loose cannon now because Jameis Winston isn't going to start, which honestly, that is not a good look for Jameis.
No,
if Jameis is
not.
getting benched for a 30-year-old guy that has probably under 50 throws in his NFL career, that is bad. But for fantasy purposes, I think Taysom Hill against Atlanta has an unreal game. I think that's my big bet for the week. I think Taysom Hill has a top 10 QB performance. I'm putting on the board.
I don't know what to do with Taysom Hill. He's a guy I don't like watching him play. Every time he comes to the game, I get annoyed because like it's not a real offense. It's gimmicks, it's gadgets, that's all it is. But then at the same time, if you're a fantasy player, if he rushes the ball 20 times, I wouldn't be surprised. And he could easily get 2 rushing touchdowns. So
easily. And even if he throws the ball and it's going to be like, you have Michael Thomas who is Mr. Slants. So if he's only running slants and you just have to throw it 5-10 yards to hit Michael Thomas, that's bread and butter. But we've talked about Michael Thomas on this podcast so many times, and now I said this is a blow up game for him against Atlanta. Now I'm not sure because with Taysom Hill as the quarterback, like what the heck? Like if he doesn't perform now, you're gonna be like, I have 2 more weeks of Taysom Hill as quarterback, 3 more weeks maybe
at least,
and that's gonna be going into fantasy playoffs. And if you have Michael Thomas, like I would genuinely be very keen on watching this game to see what happens. Because if Michael Thomas doesn't get a regular target share or just kind of just disappears because Taysom Hill can't find him, this is not a good look.
Even with his normal target share, I'd be worried about production. Like they're not gonna throw as much as they usually do. Mm-hmm. So even if he's getting, let's say, 25% of targets, which is a pretty good target share, that could be what? That could end up being 5 targets, which there's no way you're happy with Michael Thomas with 5 targets unless he's pulling in a touchdown. So I think you still have to start him. The matchup's too good. You've been banking on having him back, but it turns him into a wide receiver too in my eyes. Like, I don't know how. I don't see the path to him having a 30-point week or anything like that.
The only path I see is that if Sean Payton is magically pulling everybody's strings here and just somehow going to start Jameis Winston, or even involve Jameis Winston in a lot more plays and actually have him throw the football, because like I said, I wouldn't even put Michael Thomas is he's a high-end high-end wide receiver 2 for me this week, because I just don't know what Taysom Hill's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Taysom Hill comes out and actually is the starter, not just in name, but is actually getting plays, I don't think we're going to see Jameis. I think very much if they've built the offense this week around Taysom Hill, that's what it's going to be. But I do think it's not insane that maybe they're just still playing mind games. If it wasn't Schefter, I'd actually be leaning that way, but Adam Schefter's the one who tweeted that Taysom Hill's the guy, which he's very rarely wrong. So
yeah, absolutely.
I saw that news and I was kind of hoping that it wasn't completely legit, but I mean, I'm really interested to watch that game, because it's gonna be a different offense than we've seen in a while.
And you know what? As a Falcon fan, I've said at the beginning when we started 0-5, I was like, I just want us to lose every game of the year, get a good pick. Now we've won 3 out of our last 4, and it's just, you know what? I kind of want to win. I want to just cheer for my football team just once this year after week 1. I want to enjoy, and now with Taysom Hill, the quarterback, I'm like, holy crap, we get New Orleans twice, maybe with Taysom Hill instead of Drew Brees. That's maybe 2 wins, gives us 5. We get the Buccaneers, which is probably 2 losses, but you never know. And then we get the Chiefs, easy dub, no problem. We can beat the Chiefs.
Whatever you say.
Yeah. But then we get the Raiders and Chargers, who it's possible wins. I'm like, maybe Atlanta sneaks into that spot, which is another leading into my segment. Start of the week. You got to start the best wide receiver in the NFL. Start Julio Jones this week, because he is the best in the NFL, and I'm guaranteed him. I'm gonna put it on the board. Julio Jones has a top 3 wide receiver week this week.
I will take the under on a Julio Jones top 3 week, but you're obviously starting him and he's going to be great.
Oh, absolutely. If you have Julio, which I wish I did, you were starting Julio. This New Orleans Saints team has not shown that they can be a shutdown team on defense. And with the amount of weapons that Atlanta does have with Calvin Ridley and Hayden Hurst, there's a lot more they have to worry about, so they can't always double Julio, because Ridley will just eat them alive if that's the case.
My only worry is New Orleans has one of the best shadow corners in the league in Marshawn Lattimore.
Absolutely.
So if he does shadow Julio, I mean, Julio's top 2, top 3 wide receiver in the game.
Top 1.
No. We've argued this before, but
1.
He's still going to get his stats. He's still going to put up a good week, but I think it'll be harder to drop that top 3 without a touchdown or 2 in there.
Yep, and sorry, I just want to go back on the Taysom Hill thing real quick. I know in Yahoo he's not classified as a tight end, but I've heard in ESPN leagues he is classified as a tight end. So if you're listening to this and you have possibly, if Taysom Hill is magically still on the waiver wire, which I would imagine he's probably gone at this point, if he has that tight end availability in your league, start him immediately. Because if
he's probably a good tight end start.
The only guy I would maybe think about not starting him over is Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the game. Even then, you start him in your flex. You start him in your flex. There's no question about it, because he's a quarterback, so he's guaranteed to at least give you 10 points.
Yeah, I mean, we've said you can start him as a quarterback starter this week, and unless your league scoring is absolutely insane, your quarterbacks are putting up more points than basically anybody else.
So if you're trying to quarterback in your tight end spot, you are living the fantasy dream.
Yeah.
You don't know how bad I look. I heard about that news, and I immediately looked. And I was like, does Taysom Hill have tight end availability in the Yahoo? And I was like, oh. I was like, man, if he did, I would have picked him up as soon as I heard that news, because that would have been amazing to start him.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any other guys, Logan, that you're thinking about that we wrap up with the starts of the week?
I think that's basically, the Steelers wide receivers. If you can start any of those guys and Big Ben, anyone in that passing attack, their run game's gone pretty south lately. It hasn't been going very good, and it hasn't mattered. They've just thrown the ball like crazy.
And like throws, I think he threw it over 40 times last week against the Jaguars. No, sorry, it wasn't the Jaguars. Against the Cincinnati. He threw it 40 times against Cincinnati. And that's a team that they were beating pretty bad, and he still threw it that much. So it's like, if that's the case, holy crap. Like you said, any one of those three guys, if it's Johnson, Claypool, or Smith-Schuster, I think they're all realistically could get like 10 targets.
They've all been like basically locked in wide receiver, like borderline 1 wide receivers, but like high end 2, low end 1 kind of guys for a few weeks now.
That's all of them. That's not just one of them. That's all of them. So it's like, yeah, like if you have either one of those guys, you start them with confidence this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, Big Ben, I think he's going to smash this week because, again, if we're saying all three of those guys are starts, that's how they're getting the ball is Big Ben. So I think, especially against Jacksonville, they're not going to be able to stop them from doing what they want. He's got major upside this week.
And I think for me, the last absolute starts of the week, I feel like it goes without saying. If you have, this is very personal for me, but if you have Justin Herbert or Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, anybody going up against the Jets really for that LA Chargers team, especially if they're in the receiving part of the game, you start them.
Yeah.
Like I have Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert because I made a trade with Logan to acquire Herbert on Tuesday. So now I have that stack. I am super excited to start that stack for the rest of the season, especially this week.
Yeah.
Because Herbert, I think Herbert's going to have an unreal week this week against the Jets. So it's like anybody you have against the Jets this week, easy start. No problem.
Fire them up.
That's easy. So now with the starts of the week kind of out of the way, let's go to what we are going to preview for week 11 of the fantasy season. We've already talked a little bit about what we just talked about with the Jets and the Chargers. We talked obviously about the Saints and the Falcons a little bit.
Yep.
Now, is there anything else that you are feeling could possibly go down, or is there something to look into before the week?
I'm interested to watch that Eagles-Browns game because, I mean, I think both those teams, you're kind of locked in with the running backs. You got Miles Sanders for the Eagles. You got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt for the Browns. But both of them in the receiving game, there's a lot kind of up in the air that we're waiting to see how it all kind of falls into place. Like the Eagles, they've got Goddard, who... I mean, we had big expectations for him, and he's kind of fallen flat a couple weeks in a row. But then you also have Travis Fulgham, Jalen Reagor. Even you can see what Alshon Jeffrey does.
Like that receiving core for both of those teams is so spotty that you don't know who the heck's going to get a touchdown or who's going to even get a catch most plays. Like, I don't even know. And both those quarterbacks have been very underwhelming this year. Especially with Baker. Baker's taken a huge step back and does not look anywhere near what he did 2 years ago or even last year. So that's something that you definitely got to look at for that game because like you said, like I don't know realistically what's going to happen in the passing game. The run game is where you're going to live. I think if you have either one of those running backs, I think you obviously start Chubb and Sanders and confidence, and even Kareem Hunt is a really good flex option you could start because he's been that way all year.
Kareem Hunt's been great.
He's been great, and that's something like you said, like running game there, easy. Other than that, like it's very up in the air. You don't know what to expect.
On the Browns side too, since Odell's gone down, they've had 2 just terrible weather games and a bye. So like, we haven't really seen how that passing offense is actually going to break down with like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper.
Yep.
Like, I think it'll be a lot of Jarvis Landry, and then you mix in Higgins and Hooper, but we still haven't seen it. So it's going to be interesting for me to watch and see how those targets break down.
See, what I'm curious about this week is the Vikings-Cowboys. I want to see... I don't think the Cowboys are going to win this game. I think the Vikings are going to win because they've been on a roll, but I'm curious to see if they can stop Dalvin Cook the way the Bears stopped Dalvin Cook. Because to be honest, Dalvin Cook is just one of those guys who's just guys in fantasy that you just know are going to go off. No problem. But against the Bears, he didn't really do anything. And they forced Kirk Cousins to throw the football where Adam Thielen had 2 receiving touchdowns. In a loss for me, by the way. But nevertheless, if the Cowboys can stop Cook, I feel like that's their only hope. Especially in fantasy. If you are an owner of Thielen or Jefferson, you are hoping Dalvin Cook gets balled up because if he doesn't against Dallas, he will run on Dallas all day, and I would probably say you'd have another 30-point week, another 20-plus point week easy against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't expect them to bottle them up, but saying that, they actually have a pretty talented D-line, and like Jalen Smith has been pretty bad this year at linebacker. Van Der Esch has been beat up, but if both those guys return to form, I think they're both healthy.
I think
there's a very off chance that they could actually have a good game, and at least slow him down.
Yeah. And like Kirk Cousins, like that, they don't want Kirk Cousins to throw the football. They want Dalvin Cook to run it all day long. So that's why I feel like last week against the Bears, they were really they were uncomfortable that game because they're just not used to throwing the football that much.
Yeah. Yeah, that Bears defense, I mean, they're so good. I love watching. I mean, I hate watching that team play because they're so boring, but that defense it's impressive to watch. Like, they don't let you do anything you want to.
Now, I think one of the games of the week for me that I'm really curious about is the Green Bay Packers and the Indianapolis Colts. Those are two top contenders, both division leaders right now at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious to see if Indianapolis can keep up offensively with Green Bay. Because this is the cool thing about this game, is Green Bay has a good offense, not a great defense. Indy has a really good defense, not a great offense.
Yeah.
So it's like this is a perfect kind of even matchup. And for fantasy, I'm really curious to see is Michael Pittman officially the guy in Indianapolis? Because like I said on Tuesday that Michael Pittman, or was it Tuesday? I think it was. Yeah, it was probably. I think it was Tuesday. I said Michael Pittman is somebody you should pick up, or I've said it before.
Yeah.
But if he is the guy in Indianapolis, I think that is something to like. If he can chew up the Green Bay Packers defense, that's something curious because we all know Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams. He can do whatever, but even that Indy defense kind of gives you a little bit. Maybe they can stop him, but that's what I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game because if the Packers get ahead, I think it could get ugly because the Colts aren't a great passing team and the Packers actually have a pretty good passing defense. Mm-hmm. But if the Colts can stay in it, they want to run the ball. You're able to run the ball on the Packers, so that could be a really interesting game.
Yep.
I'm interested to see how the Colts running back room shapes up. Like, Hines was clearly the best guy in that game last week. Like, he was far and away their best running back, but they've kind of shown they're willing to ride the hot hand. So if he comes out slow, you could see either Wilkins or Taylor kind of jump up. Saying that, I don't really want to start. I mean, if you're going to start one, it's Hines.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if he gets the full workload again, or if it kind of goes back to whoever gets a few big runs starts to take more work.
I'm serious. Yeah, like honestly, they have such a revolving door running back in Indianapolis that it's like I don't even know who to start weekly for fantasy. Like you said, I would start Hines if I had him. I think he's probably, like you said, the guy to go to because he had a really good week last week. Other than that, it's like I don't know what's going to happen because Taylor's had that where he's had 2 great drives and then he had 1 bad drive and like, okay, you start now. Yeah, and then Hines has a good rest of the game, and then you're like, well, what the heck? Why didn't Jonathan Taylor play? Like, he just had 1 bad drive.
I want to buy in on Jonathan Taylor, but it's getting tougher the longer it goes because he hasn't looked that impressive. Mm-hmm. Like, coming out of college, he was kind of that Zeke Elliott type where he was a big between the tackles, like, chunk yard kind of guy, wear you down as the game goes on. In the NFL, it hasn't really worked. So I'm interested to see if he can get, like, he's still a rookie, so maybe he's just taking time, or if maybe he's just not as good as we thought, and then, like, Hines and Wilkins are actually, like, willing to or able to fight for that role with him.
Yeah. There's another thing in a different game. I'm curious. I want to ask you, Logan, do you buy Cam Newton maybe being a top 10 quarterback this week against Houston?
This week, yes. I mean, I think Cam Newton's a guy you kind of got to play the matchups with, especially if you're looking for any kind of upside, but Houston's defense is terrible. So I think, especially, it'll be interesting to see, because it's kind of, I mean, it's almost weakness on weakness. Like, the Patriots have a bad offense, the Texans have a bad defense, and then on the other side, the Texans actually have a pretty good offense, and the Patriots have a pretty decent defense. So it'll be interesting to see how that breaks down, whether we get a high-scoring game or a low-scoring game.
Yeah. That's something I'm really curious about too, because I'm just like, you know what? I think Cam Newton could honestly have like a top 10, maybe even at best, maybe a top 5 performance at QB position this week. And not going to lie, I thought about, before I made the trade with you, I thought about maybe I just start Cam Newton this week.
Yeah.
Because I had Ryan Tannehill and he's been doing bad and he gets Baltimore this week. So I was like, well, maybe I start Cam Newton, see what happens. But then you offer me that you want Herbert, and I was like, ooh.
Yep.
Like, yes, please.
Yeah, Cam Newton this week is actually, I like him as a start. I think he's a guy he's been terrible for NFL, but he's actually been good for fantasy. Mm-hmm. So as much as I don't like the idea of starting him, I think he's a guy you could almost start every week and kind of know you have a decent start.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I just want to go over 2 more games I want to go over, and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay. I want to start with, this is very personal for you, Do you think the Chiefs absolutely destroy the Raiders? And do you
Yes.
think Pat Mahomes just starts slinging touchdowns like he was born to do?
Yeah. The Chiefs are pissed off after the last game. Like
they
it's division, and I don't know if you've heard this, but the Raiders after the last game took a victory lap around the stadium in the bus. Like they actually,
Oh, wow.
they were selling hard, and it's come up a couple times in Chiefs press conferences this week. Andy Reid off the bye has historically been just awesome, and the Chiefs we're 8-1, and we've kind of coasted through games. Like I look at it like against Baltimore, we showed up and we cranked them early. That was a game we were fired up for. And then you look at a game like there's been a few games this year like against the Jets where we kind of came out early and it's just like, whatever. Like we've got this in the bag. You don't
Don't
see the fire. But
Yeah.
this week against the Raiders, I think it's gonna be
Ooh, it's going to be a juicy matchup.
especially the Raiders. I think they had 8 defensive players go on the COVID list this week. So I think they're all going to be back for the game, but they haven't had any practice time. I think the Chiefs are going to come out firing, trying to prove that they are definitively the
telling
best
you,
in the division.
Like, Pat Mahomes could be the best quarterback this week. Tyreek could easily be the best wide receiver this week. Travis Kelce could be the best tight end in fantasy this week.
Yep.
So it's like realistic. Like I totally agree with you. I think the Chiefs are just going to come out fuming after that last game that they took a loss to the Raiders. And I think for fantasy, if you have Chiefs guys, especially those big 3 guys,
Yeah.
you are loving this matchup. You are loving that they're so mad about this.
Yeah, I think the only thing I will say is in the running back room, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you start him. I don't think you can start Lev Bell. Like last game, he was splitting his touches with Darrell Williams.
Yeah, that's
And-
not good.
And Darrell was ahead of him. Like he actually came out on the field first. So maybe he has a good game. Like it's completely possible that coming out of the bye, he has a bigger role again. But I don't think you can feel safe in that because he also just might not see the field. Like we saw that with LaShawn McCoy last year.
Yeah.
He came in, he didn't have the juice we expected, and a few weeks in, he just wasn't playing. So I'm not saying that's what I'm calling for, but it's just something to watch out for, and I would be trying to avoid starting Lev Bell.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to the final game of Week 11. That is the LA Rams versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Actually, like a low-key, like really good Monday nighter for this.
Yeah.
Like for the first time almost, it feels like this year.
Primetime games this week have been fantastic.
Yeah, if we're going to have honestly, even the Chiefs destroy, great for prime time. We had a
Yep.
great last night game on Thursday. And if hopefully, like I've said it before, the last time I said it was the game of the week for the Buccaneers, they kind of put up a big piece of garbage game.
That was fun for me to watch.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything like that again. But what I'm gonna say is I'm curious because I just traded for Ronald Jones in our league. So are you in that Ronald Jones? I know he's gonna split still carries with Leonard Fournette, but do you buy that he is now the guy after the last week's performance?
I think he's still kind of exactly who he always was. He's matchup dependent because he is the running back. Like he is the on the ground running back. Leonard Fournette is the passing guy. So if they're winning, it's going to be just Ronald Jones early and often. Like he's going to touch the ball a ton. But you look at it like against the Saints, they were down early. Like they were never in that game. So I think they ran the ball, I believe it was 4 times all game. Ronald Jones still got 3 of those carries. So that's a 75% running back share, which like obviously 3 carries, not ideal, but he was still the running back in that game. It just, they didn't run.
Yeah.
So if you think they're going to beat the Rams or if it's going to be a close game, I think Ronald Jones is a perfectly fine start.
Yep.
I think actually you can get away with starting both those guys this week because I think it's going to be a close game and both will be necessary.
Yeah, I only asked that because I am starting Ronald Jones this week, and I
Yeah.
do think he obviously has the slight edge because Bruce Arians said on multiple occasions Rojo was their guy.
Yeah.
So like he is, like you said, he's very matchup dependent. He's gonna run the ball if they're winning a ton, but that's the problem. Is like there's still another guy that kind of eats away at his touches. But I
Yeah.
think in a game like this, I think he should be fine.
I will say it was encouraging last week. Bruce Arians is known as a guy who's pretty tough on you when you fumble. Like, generally doesn't matter who you are. If you fumble, you're basically done the game. Like, Ronald Jones had that, I think it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And he fumbled early. It led to a score, and then he was right back out there. So I think they have shown that when they want to run the ball on the ground, he's clearly their best option, and they don't really want Fournette to be that guy.
Yep.
So I think, again, like, he's going to get the bulk of the carries, and Fournette's going to get the bulk of the catches.
And now, is this the first week that all the receivers for the Buccaneers are officially healthy?
I think they were all there last week,
Okay.
but Godwin was probably limited coming back
Yep.
from an injury.
Do you think this is the first week Antonio Brown gets a touchdown since like 2 years ago?
It's very possible. I think Mike Evans is going to have a rough game with Jalen Ramsey, and that opens up stuff for...
Well, look what he did against DK.
Yeah.
So if he can do that against DK this season, like Mike Evans is not really a guy you would be excited to start.
No, Mike Evans is a guy that can be shut down by lockdown corners. Like you just look, like we already brought up Marshawn Lattimore, but Mike Evans in his career against Lattimore has just been awful, and that's a twice-a-year matchup.
And
So
even going against Bradbury against the Giants, he did nothing until he got that touchdown late in the fourth quarter.
yeah,
So if you like, when you get shadowed by elite corners like that, it's very tough for him to do anything. So I think obviously the guy you're starting, feeling pretty good about it if he's healthy, fully, is Chris Godwin in the slot, because like Brady and slot receivers, they just mesh together.
Yeah.
Gronkowski's so he's gonna have his weeks where he's on or he's off.
Yep.
And then Antonio Brown is still that wild card. I just want to see do something.
I'm curious to see if they maybe put Jalen Ramsey on Antonio Brown a bit, because I don't think he's going to be on Godwin. Like as we said, Godwin's a slot receiver. Ramsey's not going to shadow in the slot too much, but I'm curious to see how that breakdown goes with Antonio Brown and Mike Evans.
Yeah. I've just been really curious, because I just kind of low-key want to see Antonio Brown get a touchdown.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been like that for 2 years, and just something that would bring back the good days of fantasy. Not necessarily the good days. There's always good days in fantasy.
Yeah.
But like a blast from the past, when you see Antonio Brown catch a touchdown, it's like, man, I remember that for the Steelers when I had him and I picked him at number 3 in my fantasy draft.
Yeah, I swear he was the guy in the first round for just so long. Like my first 2 years in fantasy, I took him in the first round because it was just like he was the locked-in top wide receiver every year.
And it's crazy to think of that team had legitimately a top wide receiver and the top running back very much like taken off that team. Like you almost picked the like Lev Bell and Antonio Brown in the top 5 every year for like 3 years straight, which is crazy to think about. Because when you look at your last fantasy drafts, like who was the guy? Like was there 2 guys on the same team you took in the first round in the top 5 picks?
I think the only ones would be Kamara, Michael Thomas, possibly.
But even then, like that's like Kamara has been
for
like,
a year.
But like that was legitimately like 3 years in a row that you were taking those guys, and you would take Antonio Brown like legitimately. You could take him at number 1, and you'd be happy with it.
Yeah, he was just so steady. Like most wide receivers, they kind of have some year-to-year fluctuation. There's some health issues, stuff like that, where like Antonio Brown was every year. You just knew you were getting a locked-in elite wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's enough from the blast from the past. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Ryan Log Fantasy Show. As always, we thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. We have gotten a couple recent new subscribers, so it's like, thank you guys.
Yep,
We really
shout out.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys for listening in. Hopefully that we can keep growing this channel and keep doing this because we really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, as always, thank you for listening. If you could please like the video and subscribe and hit the notification bell, that way you don't miss any of our new videos that we will post. And hopefully this week you have a really good fantasy week and you win, because we're going on the stretch for the playoffs. Big playoff pushes for a lot of teams.
Yep.
So hopefully your fantasy team does well. Good luck. Have fun with this week. Enjoy the games. And as always, stay classy.